During the meeting yesterday, when you decided to call Vladimir Putin, what was the reaction among the other people in the room, and what was President Putin's reaction to being brought into a phone call in the middle of your meeting?
Well, I think they expected it. I didn't do it in front of them. I thought that would be disrespectful to President Putin. I wouldn't do that because they have not had the warmest relations. And actually, President Putin wouldn't talk to the people from Europe. I mean, that was part of the problem. They
had stepped out of the Oval Office to make the call?
They had no communication with the White House for years.
So can you describe for us how that happened? Did you just announce that you were going to go into the other room to make the phone call, and then you got up and left and then came back?
I think they sort of knew I was, at the end of the meeting, I was going to call President Putin, and President Putin expected it. And he was there. Now, by the time I called him, it was 1 o'clock in the morning in Russia. Russia's a big place. You know, they have 11 time zones, I believe. 9 or 11, but I think it's 11.
But
think
Mr.
of it,
President,
11 time zones. That's a lot of time zones. So,
what a chump. What a little baby chump. This guy left another meeting that he's supposed to have with the leader of the country that has been invaded, that he and his administration still refuse to admit that Putin invaded the country, as even though everyone saw that happen. But he didn't want to disrespect Vladimir Putin by having a phone call conversation in front of the people that he attacked. Just, I know it already sounds bad, but think about it fully. He didn't want to disrespect the guy who's a wanted war criminal, who's been part of kidnapping children and taking them out of their homes, who's been killing people indiscriminately, who's been doing that in a country that he invaded. And as they're trying to talk about it, he didn't want to disrespect him because he knows that they're having a fractured relationship. What might they have a fractured relationship over? This is after that red carpet rollout, when they then left their private meeting that no one else gets to see in front of the Oval Office and in front of White House cameras. And then when Zelensky calls and he doesn't go, here, shush, Vladimir, I need to go talk to Zelensky. I can't have you listen to it, though, or else everyone will hear what we're talking about. Covert operations in front of everybody. And for some reason, he still thinks it's covert. Everyone knows it. He said, Vladimir Putin expected me to call him. Daddy said, when that meeting's over, I want you to tell me everything that's going on so that I can tell you what you're supposed to do next. He doesn't know how much of a little chump he looks like. He has no idea. He did get caught on a hot mic, though, talking about how much Vladimir Putin loves him.
Yeah, I think
to set up a trilateral. You know, so.
And where do you want to
I think he wants to I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds. Here, sit down. Sit down, everybody.
Okay. He thinks Vladimir Putin really wants to make a deal for me. He told me I'm his friend. He told me he likes me. He said he likes my face. He said he likes the way I blend my makeup right around my back of my ear and my chin, where you can see that deep, dark line. He said he loves it. He said I won the 2020 election. He also said that the reason I lost the 2020 election is because of those rigged voting machines and also the mail-in voting. These aren't even things that are easy, that are hard to see the buttering up that's happening. But this dumb just laps it up. I think he's going to do it for me. It's weird. Do you think he was doing this for you too, Donnie? Ukraine's Air Force reported a major Russian attack on Monday night and into Tuesday morning. That's weird. That's like now. The largest overnight barrage for weeks, coming while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with Trump and a delegation of European leaders in Washington. The Air Force said Russia launched 270 drones and 10 missiles into Ukraine, of which 30 drones and 6 missiles were intercepted or suppressed. The Air Force reported the impacts of 40 drones and 4 missiles across 16 locations, with debris reportedly falling in 3 locations. But Donald Trump still thinks this guy wants to end the war for him. He literally did this right when you were going to meet with the guy that he's been attacking in the country that he just launched the second biggest day of missiles he's ever launched. And you think he wants to end this for you? Again, bro. There's this weird narrative that says people who are against this guy in the White House, or just have some kind of derangement syndrome, or just don't like him and don't love our country. The problem is that he doesn't know what he's doing. He's caught up with this idea that, just like what he said about Kim Jong-un, they like me, they're my friends, so they're gonna do anything for me, as they do the exact opposite. All you gotta do is butter his ass up, and he's gonna go for it. There's more of what he's been doing. Oil refining and gas facilities were also attacked, describing the strikes as the latest in a campaign of systematic terrorist attacks against Ukraine's energy infrastructure, which is a direct violation of international humanitarian law. Monday night's attack was the largest attack since Russia launched these 309 drones and 8 missiles into Ukraine on July 31st. Man, that wasn't even a full month ago. But he thinks that he's working for him. He thinks that he's going to get some help, even though right after that same meeting that he told him, you're a great guy, they didn't take any questions because of how badly it went. But he has some stipulations for Ukraine.
There'll be some form of security. It can't be NATO because that's just not something that would ever happen. They couldn't do that.
So
who would want that? I mean, if you were Russia, who would want to have your enemy, your opponent, sitting on your line? You don't do that.
He said, if you were Russia, why would you want Ukraine to be part of NATO? You're right. If you were Russia, but the problem is, Donnie, you're not Russia. You're not Vladimir Putin. You just work for him. How does he not see that he's sitting there speaking for him? Like he said this on TV and nobody that sat there in that couch went, shush, 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 yo, Donnie, shush, shush, shush. This makes us look really bad. We're still kissing your ass. This makes us look bad now that you just said you're working for Vladimir Putin. As we're seeing him literally attack the country that you're talking about, you don't want him sitting right across from as this buffer between you and Europe that you don't want to sit right across from, because why would you want your enemy there in NATO? There's a reasons why they're his enemy, because he attacked them. So one of those security guarantees of being a part of NATO is completely off the table because Vladimir Putin said, Donnie, hell no, you work for me. So there is this guy that was once supposed to be the attorney general for this administration, except, they found out about his dealings and dabblings with 14 to 17-year-old girls. And this guy's name is Matt Gaetz. You won't be surprised to hear what his solution might be to end this war. Remember, we just talked about Donald Trump saying NATO would be off the table for Ukraine because that'd be a problem for Russia.
I've got an idea. Offer NATO membership to Russia. Of course, for this carrot, Trump would need to get everything he wants out of Putin regarding the end of hostilities, economic cooperation, and territorial disputes. Before you suggest I'm crazy for thinking about NATO and Russia as partners, the idea has been floated by foreign policy thinkers on the right and left for some time. In 1997, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee held a hearing on NATO expansion. President Clinton's Secretary of State Madeleine Albright reflected on groundbreaking cooperation between NATO and Russia. The thinking prevailed that we had to expand NATO and encircle Russia. We learned that an animal backed into a corner can lash out. We chose encirclement over cooperation when people were saying cooperation could be part of our forward-looking path with Russia. Michael McFaul was President Obama's ambassador to Russia. In 2006, he wrote an article titled, "Why a Democratic Russia Should Join NATO." Again, this reinforces that NATO membership is an earned reward, not an entitlement. But why not give Russia a chance to earn it? NATO membership for Russia isn't coming tomorrow. But to make peace, everyone needs to give up something and get something. Everyone needs to feel safer in peace than at war. Making war is easy. All you have to do is attack. Making peace is hard. But at least the Trump administration is making progress. We believe that progress could and should ultimately lead to NATO expansion to Russia, if everyone behaves.
That guy spoke for almost 5 minutes about breaking his case. He went to Madeleine Albright. He went to McFaul's points. He went to some other Republican senator from the early 2000s about all their points about adding Russia to NATO as a peace process. What is it about that? His points about Russia and them being maybe peaceful and want to be added to NATO. There is some history behind that. And I was like, I don't know much about that. So I did this weird thing. I read. And when I read, I found this out. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, otherwise known as NATO that we're talking about, was created in 1949 in the aftermath of the Second World War to counter the Soviet Union. While NATO worked to establish a partnership with Russia following the end of the Cold War, this is the best part, all cooperation ceased when Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. So when there's peaceful things are going on, they're offering these opportunities to be in NATO. But, every time there's some kind of offering of peace in NATO, it was weird because, Putin did this thing and he didn't cooperate. Here's more. Here's more. I read this too. During President Vladimir Putin's time in power between 2002 and 2008, NATO and Russia participated in the NATO-Russia Council, the formal meetings of which came to an end, here's another good part, amid Russia's military action in Georgia in 2008. So now NATO's website states the Russian Federation is the most significant and direct threat to allies' security. Matt Gaetz says as long as we offer them all this stuff, they'll be great, except it's been offered. He pointed out it had been offered in the past. He just neglected the part about how Russia didn't cooperate enough to be involved because they don't want it. Because the biggest threat to, Russia doing the things that they're doing under Vladimir Putin is, other folks stopping them. Here's the last stupid thing Donald Trump said about the potential agreements between Zelensky and Putin. Again, Zelensky and Putin. This is part of the whole deal that he was supposed to have broken down and have straight out outside of that ceasefire that he's since abandoned is this bilateral talks between them two. This is what he had to say about how great that's going.
What has surprised you the most between Zelensky and Putin in terms of their strength or weakness of their position right now?
Well, I think the fact that maybe they're getting along a little bit better than I thought. Otherwise, I wouldn't have set up the 2 meeting. I would have set up the 3, a trilat. But I think they're doing a little bit better. There's been tremendous bad blood. And again, this was all worked out by an administration that didn't have a clue. So we're setting up a meeting. I sort of set it up with Putin and Zelensky. And, they're the ones that have to call the shots. We're 7,000 miles away, in all fairness.
What he really wants to point out is the relationship between Zelensky and Putin. I mean, they're getting along. It's getting a little bit better. I think it's getting a little bit better. I mean, they're okay. The problem is that the thing is that I've added them to this group. They're supposed to have meetings now. Do you guys want to know how good things are going between Zelensky and Putin, and how well Donald Trump is doing with putting this meeting together? Because I did some more reading. Trump, Zelensky, and European leaders all confirmed their support for a direct bilateral meeting between Zelensky and Putin. By the way, it's Trump, Zelensky, and European leaders said this. A proposal that the Russian president has repeatedly dodged. Weird, he's not agreeing to it. Such a meeting will be followed by a trilateral meeting between Trump, is what the president said. Zelensky said Ukraine is ready for a trilateral discussion. Trump remarked, I think it's going to be when, not if. The same guy that thinks Vladimir Putin is his best friend and wants to make a deal for him, the same guy who thinks he's getting somewhere with these talks, the same guy who's ignoring the fact that Putin just launched tons more missiles into Ukraine, thinks it's going to be not a question of when, but not a question of if, but when. There's a weird thing, though, because the Kremlin is yet to explicitly confirm Putin's readiness to attend such a meeting. Yuri Ushakov, a top Kremlin aide, said in a statement that that Trump and Putin, quote, expressed their support for the continuation of direct negotiations between the Russian and Ukrainian delegations. There's a continuation of discussions between their delegations, not between Zelensky and Putin, because Putin said, who said I'm going to talk to this guy? I'm launching missiles and invading more territory. Why would I talk to him? That's not what I want to do. Yo, we've had potential ceasefires that have been talked about. I violated those too. When is this guy going to stop kissing my ass? Because it's pretty obvious what I'm actually doing. So again, the anger for this guy is not because he has a weird looking face. And don't get me wrong, he does. But it's also because he doesn't know what he's doing. He got buttered up by a guy who they say is a master at manipulating people and getting them to say and think certain ways while he carries out whatever objectives he wants to. Except this one's easy. This is to go, hey, Donnie, you rub him on his chin. You go, hey, Donnie, I like you. You're a good guy. You're really smart, smarter than everybody else in the country. And he'll go, okay, what do you want?